So we're going to start by introducing ourselves and saying what our Twitter handles are. So my name's Sarah Pinch. If you've been tweeting at Sarah_Pinch, that is a very lovely lady who lives in Melbourne and writes a blog about spaghetti bolognese. And she works for Porto Novelli, ironically. So I am at Ms_organised.
I'm Paul Sutton, and my Twitter handle is the Paul Sutton.
I'm Danny Whatmough. Similar to Zoe, my username is quite long. If you just take my two names and put them together, you've got it. At Danny Whatmough.
I'm pretty simple, at Matt J. Gilbert.
I'm Charles Arthur, and it's at Charles Arthur, all one word.
So simple. So we've heard quite branding. We've heard quite a lot about paid and shared and owned in some of the presentations this morning. We are going to talk about, I'm going to ask each of the panel members to talk about their understanding of paid and shared and owned, and where they think the communications and PR professionals kind of sit within that. We'll see where we go with that. I'm quite interested in talking about how some of this impacts on what the business is going to look like in the future. And then some people came up to me at lunchtime and said they had specific questions that they'd like to ask in this session, so we'll try and get to those as well. Now, I'm president of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. I chair a 50-50 male-female board. We are doing a huge amount of work on gender, 67% of women in PR, and here is an empty chair. So who, female, would like to come and join and talk about Peso? Quick. Sarah Hall, it's going to be you if it's no one else. Great.
Hooray!
We'll come to you at the end so you can get mic'd up. But Charles, if we start with you,
You're really going to start with me?
You don't want me to start with you? I can start with Danny.
Someone who's not in the PR business?
Well, I presume you're here because you've got something to say about this model.
I think I'll be better as someone who gives the counterpoint.
Okay.
Ooh.
I'm going to start with Danny.
Oh, okay, fine. So, paid. For me, paid is an absolute no-brainer. I spend my time walking around Weber-Shandwick telling people why I think they need to be doing more paid. However, I also think it's not quite as simple as that. And this is something that Alex Myers alluded to earlier on. And that's this slight idea that I think there is a danger that by bringing paid in, it kind of suggests that actually we can get away with doing shit content. And for me, paid is absolutely something that as PR practitioners we should be using. Why any media relations campaign does not have a budget line in for an Outbrain or a Taboola campaign is, I just don't understand why that still doesn't happen. So I think it's absolutely fundamentally important. Peso, as we saw with the case study you've just seen, is absolutely important and fundamental to what we do. But I do think there is that danger. So I think we must embrace paid. We must hire more people, to Jonathan's point, that know how to do this stuff. The last hire I made was somebody from MediaCom, somebody that probably started their career in media, probably not thinking they were going to end up in a PR agency. But those are the sorts of skills and techniques that we now need, and we need to bring them into our agencies. We need to have them working on our campaigns, and we need to do it sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Matt, do you want to go next?
Sure, yeah. So I suppose I come at this from a slightly different perspective because I work at Guardian Labs, which you could argue is in the sort of paid content space. And the majority of our customers are media agencies and clients direct. We do work with some PR agencies. I think there's an absolute sort of structural change going on probably around who is in charge of kind of content planning and buying in that industry. And you're seeing the big agency groups buying contract publishers, for example. So I suspect media agencies are looking at some sort of the PR world and have a slightly envious eyes on it to a certain extent. I think, and I'm sort of...
Why do you think they have envious eyes? In regard to...
Because what we're seeing is that if you kind of divide the world from sort of classic display advertising to everything else, which either you call content or you call this more sort of engagement style programs, I think media agencies are perhaps a little behind, and they want to move into that space. They don't want to be just stuck in the kind of programmatic, arguably race to the bottom in sort of display advertising on kind of rates and what have you. So I think media agencies are slightly perhaps envious or jealous a little of the kind of natural storytelling ability that PR firms have and the relationship they have with their clients in that space. And in my experience talking to PR agencies, you see there is already, in some ways, a more mature understanding of how you do sort of go to market and try and influence with a fantastic story. So I picked up on the introduction about this idea of the spend is going in that introduction. It's fascinating to think if PR agencies are or are not positioned to sort of take that, because that's a really big question. And I think the media agencies are a big part of that as well.
Okay. Paul, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd probably come at it at a different angle again, I think.
Good.
A lot of the companies that I'm working with now and consulting with are smaller companies, mid to small size agencies, not the likes of your Webber Shandwicks, for example. And I think what I'm seeing is there's still a reluctance to embrace paid as a serious tactic to help amplify PR content. I can't really tell you the reason why that is, whether it's a lack of education, lack of understanding, whether it's being pushed through from the client end, but it's certainly something that I'm seeing, and I think the mid to small size agencies and brands are lagging behind somewhat the larger ones.
Okay. I don't know your name.
I'm Stella.
Stella.
Hello.
Do you want to come in? Do you want to tell us your Twitter handle so that we can all thank you
at
for
Stella
joining?
Bales, Bayles.
Great. And what's your take on what we're...
I'm just going to do a very quick introduction, if that's all right. So I work at coveragebook.com, but the reason why I wanted to come and join the panel was that I spent 6 years in PR and then moved to the search industry and spent 6 years in a SEO agency where I built a comms team within that.
Okay.
So paid was very much a part of that, as well as many other channels. So lots of interest here. So I think that, yes, absolutely need to embrace, but I think that with the whole development in digital and especially paid, I do feel like all of us within the PR industry and all industries need to just be honest about what we don't know and just all help each other. That I feel like that's probably one of the biggest blockers, that actually we're all a bit nervous about revealing what we don't know and actually just asking for help and helping each other out with how-tos. And I feel like that's actually a bit of a gap in today. I feel like we need to do more how-tos. I thought the last talk was brilliant, showing that case study and talking about measurement, and we need to do more of that. And if we all just, drop our egos and say, actually, I don't know that, can you tell me about that? Then we will absolutely embrace this kind of model.
Which is some of what Jem was saying earlier,
Exactly,
wasn't it? About there are other industries that are much better at helping each other out and sharing knowledge, and perhaps we're not so good at.
Absolutely, and that was one of the first sort of realisations when I moved from PR to search. Yeah.
Okay. So, Charles, you're going to give us the alternative view.
The counterpoint. Okay, so I'm a journalist, and for the past 9 years I was working as the Guardian's technology editor. So I'm, to a large extent, I'm the person who's been on the receiving end. I'm sort of the media, in the earned media side. And my perspective, looking more broadly at what's happening to media generally and content as well, is that obviously earned media, newspapers is becoming, news organisations, is becoming a smaller part of what people share. So that at the moment is the thing that I think it's where I see a lot of PR agencies focusing on. But obviously that can't be as important as it used to be. The whole idea of sharing and the case study we just saw, that, in retrospect you go, of course a chocolate Cumberbatch is going to be huge with women. Obviously it's so obvious. But it's the sort of thing where so many of the PR companies I've seen would have stopped at the survey of who's the hunkiest, who's the dishiest man. And actually it is that one step further, going to the chocolate thing that is the genius in that campaign. But what I bet you'd also find is that if you looked at loads of campaigns where they went one step beyond the obvious and tried to do a licorice all sort, Madonna or something. That it's sort of like, this really flopped. Why did it flop? Why it was such a great idea. And the trouble is that so much now relies on virality, on stories sort of just suddenly taking off. And we see the things that take off like a rocket, but you don't see the things that just flop and fall on their arse. And the difficulty is that it's so hard to know what will take off. You know, I know that we've tried for years, and you know, at The Guardian, we're always sort of thinking, what's going to be the story that people will really love to read? And you can never be quite sure what it's going to be. You know, random things which I threw off in half an hour would go gigantic, and things that I spent weeks on would go nowhere.
But surely what you're saying then is playing into the importance of this model, that actually it's all of these four things that need to work together. Danny, would you say when you're planning big campaigns that actually you've got to have all those four elements now?
Yeah, and I don't think any of this is a massive jump from where we've kind of always been. I think, you know, earned media, obviously we kind of all know about. Owned media, again. Shared media has always been around in some form. It's just digital technologies has made it slightly easier for, or maybe more visible for it to happen. And I think easier for us to kind of be able to measure it. And I think the paid element, I think actually in the past, paid probably didn't make sense from a PR standpoint. But I think when you look at the sort of targeting and precision you can now get with paid media, it's kind of terrifying. You know, you look at the likes of Twitter, and again, you know, to use an example, if you're running an influencer campaign, even if you're doing some traditional media outreach or influencer outreach activity, why you are not then also loading all those people into Twitter and serving content to them through paid channels as well as your kind of outreach. Again, I kind of don't see why, and I take Paul's point about, you know, a lot of reticence to do that, and trust me, I see that just as much as I did when I was working in kind of smaller agencies. But for me, it kind of feels like a no-brainer, and I think if we was to start PR from a blank sheet of paper right here, right now, today, this is exactly the model we would be using across absolutely everything.
Do you not think that's just because PR has traditionally had this view that you don't pay for coverage? And that the fact of things like Taboola and so on is such a sort of shock to the system for many people who are, you know, if they've been in the business longer than 10 years, it's like, what, you can pay and loads of people will click on it?
Yeah, I think people, there's a kind of perception that it's almost cheating. Yeah. And you know, but I think, again, if you really think about the content and the story being at the core, and again, if we look at the case study we've just talked about, pretty much all of the setup of that wouldn't change. You still do that, you still do your survey, you still create the chocolate, you still do that piece, you still do the media outreach, but then once you've got all that great awareness, you can then put a targeted paid campaign on the back of it and take it to millions more people. So for me, why you wouldn't do that is kind of just feels obvious.
You really do need the skill set of PR to do these new kind of paid tactics as well. I mean, it's not a coincidence that ad agencies are training themselves in influencer relations and storytelling, because paid just doesn't work unless you've got great content and a great story to tell and really understand influencers. It's one thing sort of paying for an ad to just be, you know, on Twitter, for example, and just, you know, be in front of an influencer, but you need to understand influencers to know what, you know, floats their boat, to be able to bring them in, and then for the content to get out there and be shared. So we're absolutely in the best place possible within this industry to be leading these kind of models.
And I guess what I'd like to see is communicators and PR people using this model right from the very start of whatever they do, and use it to plan where they're going to push content to and create content to hit each of those areas, rather than what I'm still seeing quite a lot, which is coming up with a campaign and idea and then trying to retrofit that to bits and pieces. I mean, Stella and I have talked quite a bit recently about the search side of things, for example, and using, just for openness, Stella's just written an ebook about this, but how to use, for example, search metrics and search keywords, for example, to build your campaign around so that whatever you do is going to attract the maximum attention. And I think that's still kind of missing. We're using things the wrong way around, if that makes sense.
So I was talking earlier about the state of the profession research that says PR people are getting involved in more and more and more aspects of business. Matt's just said that he thinks that PR people are best placed to produce some of this content. There are clearly some gaps in our knowledge, perhaps in terms of how the systems work. Someone, John, was asking me at lunch a question that I think I think it would be pertinent to bring that into the discussion now about future skills, just reminding you what you were going to ask. Do we need a mic, or can John just shout? Just shout. Go for it.
Actually, this is... Oh.
Yeah, don't cough.
Danny's already kind of referred to this in terms of the recent hire that you've made. And I guess my point was just around, we look at the Peso model, and we've seen this come up a number of times, but actually to sort of orchestrate a fundamental change in the industry, do you think that's going to come along by actually looking outside our very bog standard traditional recruitment tactics, where we kind of look for masters of all, kind of jack of all trades, PR people to come into the agency to fill gaps? We should actually be taking a much more of a different, diversified approach to hiring talent into the PR world.
Yes.
The sort of thing you'd want would be someone who sends in their CV, and when you Google them, they've bought an AdWord against their name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I didn't just recruit a PR team within I know my introduction said I built a PR team within a search agency that was simplified. It wasn't just PR and SEO. There was paid, there's technical SEO, there was UX, a full range of content developers, a full range of skill sets within those teams. It's not easy just to start bringing in different, not only skill sets, but different types of people, very different personalities. But it's a challenge, but my God, it works once you have that mix of people working together. And it really does, to your point, really it does help with building the strategy right at the beginning and then right through to measurement at the end. It's amazing, so it's worth the challenge.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think in an ideal world, absolutely, you bring all those skills together. But I also think there's the thing of the existing PR people. It was referenced this morning, you don't need to know the ins and outs of everything, of paid, of search, of coding, of everything, but you do need to know what the specialists in those areas can do, and to be able to call on those specialists and those specialist skills when you need them, and to have them front of mind, which is the main thing. So when you have a brief, you're already thinking broadly, you're not thinking in your defined role.
So I guess the question is about whether, as an industry, we need to be thinking differently about who we're encouraging to come in and work with us, isn't it? Whether they are actually working in the team or whether they are the experts that we can call on.
Yeah, I think so. And I've spoken to SEO agencies recently, so I've been working with a couple who are looking to do that from an SEO perspective. So they are creating effectively PR content teams, PR teams, communications teams within their agencies, because they know what's happening as well on the search side. So they're doing kind of the reverse of what PR needs to do. Pulling that all in-house and having specialists there. But throughout those agencies, they're all trying to build up their general knowledge.
Yeah.
I think before, just on that point, even before we sort of start our huge challenge of building a brand new team within the industry and who are we hiring, I think a first step is just to go and make friends with the other departments, with our clients. That absolutely needs to be the first step. And when we're taking our PR brief, let's just go, before we get to start on our insight and strategy, let's go and meet the rest of the departments and bring in their objectives as well. I think that's the first step.
But also, I think educating the talent we already have, and I think this is to Charles's point, the only way we're going to change mindsets within the industry is to work with teams and to do that education piece. And I think that's definitely something we're doing, because I think if we really want communicators to embrace this model, we need to give traditional PR people the kind of tools. And you're right, they don't need to be able to run these campaigns themselves, but when they're putting a campaign together, they need to be able to kind of think in this kind of way. And for me, that comes through education. It then also comes with partnership and bringing the kind of right people in to be able to deliver on it. But I think it's good that we start with the people we already have, I think, rather than rushing to kind of pull more people in.
Can I ask, a sort of an outside view, how, it's difficult enough if it sounds as though, you know, to transform the ways your own industry is thinking. What about the clients? Because I can imagine the clients must be really hard.
Yeah.
These are, you know, generally older people who think this taboola stuff is just nonsense, and they must be even harder to persuade.
Yeah, imagine going to a comms director and saying you want a paid media budget like that. You know, if the mindset in an agency is hard enough, often, and I work with some clients who are probably, you know, more forward-looking than we are on some of this stuff. So it's by no means a kind of one-size-fits-all. But I think that does certainly exist. And for us, the real win that we've had is just starting really small. And actually, you know, with an Outbrain campaign, you can just spend 500 quid and still see that uplift in results that you get. And, you know, with things like The Guardian, you can really start to measure the results and go back to the client with kind of stats and measurement that they just haven't seen before. And I think for us, taking clients and the team that we have internally on that journey and doing that kind of small step approach has been a real win for us.
So it would be good to hear from anybody who is working in-house, who has looked to broaden their budget or broaden their responsibilities. So those comms teams who are now saying or have been asked to get involved in stuff, is there anybody who's got experience of either being asked to get involved in what would have not been traditionally our area or has taken the step forward to do that themselves? There's someone just there. If you could just introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi.
Just shout.
Jenny Hayden from Swimming World. We have... We are an in-house team and we don't actually work with any agencies, and everything that we do at Swimming World we do in-house. So we've got our own web developers, we've got our own marketing team, and one of the things that we have in the past couple of years, I'd say, done is work really, really much more closely together because we've been forced to.
Being forced to because?
Because that's what we need to do to be heard and to get our campaigns out there and to be able to work together. Actually, we're forced by circumstance of what's happening to the media to work together. The other thing that I think that we've experienced recently is we're launching in America, and to be able to do that global reach, we need to understand exactly what's happening here, and you know how all of these areas do come together and integrate.
And do you use this model?
We haven't. We are now that we're working with an agency in the States, in the USA, and it's a huge learning curve for us. And I think that what we've really, really needed to get our heads round from a PR team is two things. First of all, how people see us as PR communicators and what it is that we bring to the table, as well as being able to understand how we can work with everybody else and what it is that they do. But I think it's that education, what Danny was saying, about understanding what others do, but also what we bring to the table.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah. So it's a kind of both sides of the
and I do think
process.
That as PR people, one of the things that we suffer from is not necessarily being able to really communicate what it is that we bring and what our skills are, and the fact that everybody thinks they can do PR. So I think that's...
I always used to say, this is the communications and marketing team, and then there's the rest of it, the whole rest of the organisation who think they're also experts at that. Does anyone else have experience from an in-house perspective, or indeed an agency who's seen their clients really change what they're doing, or a specific question for the panel? We've got about 10 minutes left here.
Can I talk on the opposite side of this? Because I actually work for Town Media and we operate
If you introduce yourself, yeah.
Yes, I'm James from Town Media. We operate a native advertising platform, and the problem from us is who do we actually speak to? Because who owns content? It's very interesting. Do we speak to people that are SEO people who took over content in the last couple of years? Does it sit with marketing? Is it with PR? And maybe it even sits with display because they have the budgets to be able to push content out.
Who do we talk to?
Completely sympathise. Yeah.
Who do we speak to? Who do we speak to?
I think that's absolutely right. I think that is the problem. I think clients right now, I think, are trying to decide a bit more about where content sits. And you can see organisations struggling with it a little bit, and they'll hire in a new head of content, and it's fascinating to see their relationship with the head of marketing, because I think if you've got a really strong content idea, you know, I was talking to a brand the other day, and they use the phrase, I loved it, you know, sort of editorialising the marketing department. And you know, if that's true, if they genuinely want to move from sort of pushing tactical messages with nice big posters, you know, with a bit of PR on the side, whatever, to a genuine sort of content editorial idea that their brand stands for and looks to publish against those values, maybe, you know, every week, every day potentially, then that is an absolute, you know, that's a seismic shift, I think, in sort of what marketing is trying to become. So, you know, if that's true, I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but if some brands are thinking about that, then your question is spot on, because I think it's really disruptive. I don't think the clients themselves know necessarily who's best placed sometimes to then run that, because it's such a shift.
Well, we're currently running content with people buying it from SEO teams, people buying it from display, people buying it from marketing. The one people that are not buying it at the moment are people from PR. And it's kind of interesting that we're all talking about we'd like to amplify this content that we have as PR, but they seem to be the last people in the list of people within businesses that are actually wanting to buy it.
I don't think it's for the
or
not
able
wanting
to buy it.
I don't think it's that PR's not wanting. I think it's that PR aren't given the budgets to buy to be able to compete against the other channels, and mainly that's because we haven't all figured out a way of, or got to the level of measurement that the rest of the marketing channels are very confident in. So maybe that's where we need to start, and then the budgets will flow.
It's a good point, though, and I think, you know, I personally feel as though the PR agency missed out on SEO. You know, that was something that was totally there for the taking, and a whole new industry has been created around that that's worth a lot of money. And it was interesting, some of the discussions this morning, but I still think SEO is a massive opportunity the PR industry is missing. And I think paid potentially when it comes, look, I'm not saying that we're going to be taking on Mediacom or whoever and we're going to be running, you know, full-scale multi-million pounds above the line media spend. You know, that's not going to happen. Well, at least not in the next couple of years. But when it comes to, like Alex, I hate the word content, but when it comes to content marketing, I think the same is true. We are really in danger on missing out on this, because clients will be approached by other agencies or other types of agencies who will be able to do this model, and they will be able to get really good results that they'll then be able to bring. And when that happens, if the PR agency isn't offering the same sort of thing, we're going to find ourselves in a really tricky position.
So there is a real opportunity, isn't there, here for you know, I was going to say I'm going to ban anyone who swears, but now I'm about to do it. But if we really do get our shit together, then this is our platform, this is our space, isn't it? We could occupy this land.
But the budgets that come with this, and I know from experience, are much bigger than PR retainers. There's a huge opportunity for the PR industry to start to play in this area, totally embrace it, and you start to look at SEO link building budgets, about 3 times the size of PR retainers, and that is online PR. It's just called something different. Yeah.
I'm quite keen to take some more comments from the floor if we've got some. There's one over here. Any more? Anyone want to come in on this? Other people are much better at their measurement than us, and so we're never going to get the money question. Quite interested in that. One person there, yeah.
My name is Jan Matsley, and I'm from Room 7540, which is named after the original digital newsroom at the BBC, where I worked. I worked in multimedia for years, and one thing that's become very clear when you talk about content there is this model seems to focus purely on the route to the audience, assuming that content is some sort of uniform thing that you can pump out through all these channels. In my experience, every content creation program needs to be a multimedia, a multi-content program. And without a more complex way of looking at the storytelling, you cannot use all these channels. So you need to speak with the voice of the room that you are entering. You need to have different content through each of these different channels. And therefore, I would question the abilities within the PR world of actually being the best at this, because in many ways the traditional PR seems to be more about choosing the story and then leaving it to whoever they target to choose how to tell it.
So I couldn't disagree with you more, but I would like someone else to disagree on that if someone's willing to do that. Because I think that is old school, media relations where you send a fax through a machine. I think we've moved on so far from that. I don't recognise it, but someone else.
Paul. I think it comes back to the thing I said earlier about using models like this to start with as your planning base.
Yes.
So I totally agree, actually, that it's not about one bit of content, that you then pump out through numerous channels.
So my disagreement was I don't think we've ever worked like that. I don't know any successful PR person who's ever worked like that with one piece of content and pumped it out to
I think things
loads
are
of
changing,
people.
have changed. But I think what you're saying is starting with a concept, for example, and then producing content, whether it be video or paid or whatever it is, but taking that concept and building it creatively to access all those different audiences through different routes. I think that's.
But I guess I'm interested in. I think we're very far away from that, but. Maybe that's just my experience and I just get to work with people who are very far away from that. But Danny, in your broad experience of working with lots of different clients in lots of different stages, would you say, do you recognise that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I'm not sure if Peso is a model. I don't even know how to say it. Peso, whatever.
That'd be like.
Framework? Structure?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is a model, really. I think it's more of a... To Paul's point, I think it's probably more of a mindset. It's more of a kind of just way of thinking about, it's distribution that we're essentially talking about. But I think when we talk about content and creativity and all that kind of stuff, then that is a whole nother kind of hour-long debate, which again, I don't think we've cracked. So I think, yes, I agree, specific content for specific channel, and all of these 4 things probably won't necessarily work for every single piece of content, but I think what we need to be is open about the opportunities that these 4 things bring, and that would be my...
So we've got just, there's a rather frightening timer here that changes colour and it'll start flashing in a minute, won't it? So we've got about 2.5 minutes. So I just want to ask the panel to kind of leave us with a thought about, I guess from your guys' perspective in terms of being on the sort of journalistic side, but I guess now on that content curation side in the Guardian there, Matt, and from your perspectives about, how do we not let someone else steal this opportunity, because I think we're all in agreement that this is a great opportunity for communicators and indeed for audiences, because hopefully there will be a much more joined up, cohesive message that comes out from organisations and brands. So we'll start this end. Stella.
Just thinking about quickly, what does PR stand for? It's public relations. We're talking to people, we're talking to the public, we're listening to the public, we're relating to them. So if we're actually thinking about paid earns, shared, owned, etc., that's surely just that's just another form of communication. So I don't feel like this is the future, it's just what we're all living in right now. So if we're thinking about future comms, and I guess a tip of how we actually fast forward and really start to deliver great campaigns that are integrated with this kind of framework, then I'll go back to my first point that I made. We just need to everybody just lose the ego and admit what you don't know, and just start the conversations with people outside of the PR industry. Go to an SEO conference, go to a paid conference, go to all sorts. Just immerse ourselves in these areas outside of PR, and I feel like that's probably going to be the quickest way to find our route to really delivering this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think curiosity is massive here. Let go of what you're used to doing in your everyday job. Start reading, start being curious about not just this framework, but everything else as well, and just be open.
Yeah.
Develop an open mindset.
Thanks, Paul. Danny?
Yeah, and I think related to that, I would just say, get on and do it. If you're not using paid at the moment, the next campaign you do, just take 50 quid and do an AdWords campaign or do some Twitter. This is self-service now. It's not, you don't need £10,000 and a Twitter rep to do this stuff. You can go online right now and spend £3 doing a Twitter campaign. It's probably not going to get you very far, but so it's just so easy. And I think, yeah, we need to lose some of those barriers and just try it out and see what happens.
Matt?
Yeah, I think if there's a lesson of what the Guardians had to do from sort of moving from print to digital, it's definitely been sort of trying to get around the problems of sort of fear of failure and just having a. I think Google say fail, but fail fast, and we're not quite that good, but because we still agonise over things that we're probably doing wrong. But yeah, a culture where people are allowed to try things and let it kind of. There's a great learning, I think, amongst. I'm slightly talking on your behalf, but there's a huge data piece that the Guardian's done, so we've got really good access to how every article's performing, and you need to because we've got 600 articles a day, and you know they deliberately made it as user-friendly as possible, because it was a sort of a tool that sat with the data team. And now it's a tool that every journalist can log into just with their email address. And it's, you know, you click on the article, it takes you to a nice, easy data visualization of how that article's doing, how it's performing. And the sort of cultural shift from moving that data to be a team that a journalist perhaps didn't want to hear from, because maybe the article wasn't doing brilliantly or whatever, to a sort of actual, you know what, if you understand what that data means and you have a voice about how that article could be promoted better, then you're more interested in data full stop, and you'll probably learn how, therefore, to be more sort of digitally savvy.
And nothing like a good bit of competition, I suspect.
Well, so I think other newspapers have gone more directly that route, and they publish results very publicly.
I meant within the journalists within the Guardian.
Sorry, yeah.
It doesn't actually work that way, to be honest.
Doesn't it?
No, it's just, you celebrate the things that work, and the ones that don't, you go, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think there's a certain extent, yeah.
So what's my advice? It would be look at how the people who you want to receive the message, how they're consuming all the messages that they get all the time. So, they're not just necessarily reading newspapers, and even though print is still seems to be held as the highest place to get a message placed, they're watching Vines, they're doing Periscope, they're looking at Facebook, they're looking at Instagram, they're clicking on AdWords. So any campaign that you do has to be thought of in the round like that. You have to think, I'm so disappointed the Choco Batch didn't have a Vine. Why not? Because then you could have had a ready-made sort of hit, and you could have had your ident at the end. Ooh, God, missed opportunity. But this is all about knowing what things are worth. And think about how the message is going to be received. Adapt to the way that all the people who are out there receiving messages already, how they're thinking. Try to put yourself in their shoes and adapt to how you produce your message, and do the same. And probably my final word would be: the next time you're trying to win some business from a client, make sure you buy a relevant AdWord, so that when they Google, they'll hit you.
So I think we're saying this is an opportunity. This is a great opportunity, that actually the fundamental skills of good PR people, of listening and then of reflecting that back to brands and organisations, is what we do really well. And this is more opportunity to do that really well. So thank you very much to the panel, particularly thank you to Stella for joining us. Thank you very much.